Innovation and Entrepreneurship CSOs for Climate Venture Project. Along with me, Mr. Tyagarajan, our Chief Manager, is also here. As you all know, Genie project envisages to promote women entrepreneurship in green, eco-sustainable areas in the coming months. For promoting women entrepreneurship initiatives in our society, it's crucial to build knowledge about women's rights and rights-based approach among the CSO members. The awareness about women's rights will facilitate women to participate, engage, and perform in their entrepreneurial activities. For delivering this webinar, we have a very special gender expert with us today, Professor Dr. Manimekalai from Bharathidasan University. Madam has over 3 decades of teaching and research experience. She has produced many PhD scholars in gender studies. She serves in various key advisory positions across the state in gender portfolio. Madam is in advisory committee for over 20 universities on women's studies. She is the founder secretary of Regional Association of Women's Studies Menstrual Hygiene Management Consortium, and also founder member of WEAT, which is Women Entrepreneurs Association of Tamil Nadu. She has over hundreds of publications. Madam is also a trainer for women managers. She works with a conviction to promote gender sensitization and empower the marginalized women and girls through dedicated gender actions. Madam has also helped TrekStep in developing the handbook on women's rights, which was circulated to you earlier. We are glad to welcome you, Madam, again for this webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Bindu, for the nice words of introduction. And I share my slide and then start. So at the outset, I thank TrekStep and the EU project for inviting me here to interact with the CSOs. And the CSOs are really working with the people at the grassroots and bringing the issues to the limelight and thereby helping in developing policies. And as such, you are the I should say, third pillar, next only to the state and the market. And today we will be discussing on the perspectives on women's rights, the historical evolution and contemporary discourse. In fact, this PPT is for the sake of presentation, but we will be interacting with the micro level issues. If we could share, because it is a diverse community, and in India, different states will have different issues, though the issues with respect to women are common. So you always are welcome to interrupt any time and share your own experiences when a particular point is being made, or substantiate the supplement whatever is required. So there are 3 sessions which was given by the organizers. The first one is about the perspectives on women's rights, how it evolved over the years, the historical evolution, and then what is actually now in the contemporary context. And that will be the kind of 1-hour discussion, and then it will be followed by using women's legislations. Actually, given the kind of different legislations, what are the opportunities and what are the challenges in implementing it, and monitoring whether it works or do not work, if it doesn't work, if what are the issues, all such things. That is what it is, the challenges. And then gaps in a rights perspective, because we see everything in the rights perspective in the context of rights-based approaches. But unfortunately, there are gaps because of the kind of social norms providing in the society, which overrule and override the kind of written laws. And that is the huge question of issue that is to be discussed. And the third component would be rights-based approach, finding opportunities and solutions to women's rights issues by the CSOs. So there we can have still the kind of interventions you've been making using these legislations, or if the legislations do not work, what do you do, or what has to be done, etc. could be discussed. So the first one would be the perspectives on women's rights, the historical evolution. So I'll start with the moment, how when the women's movement actually started, and then go on to the framework of international, national, regional framework of laws, and then what are the actual in the context of in the Indian context, the legal perspectives and the kind of laws available and how they work, and if there is any gap, why. So the women's rights movement, actually, we have to draw experiences from the West, where the actual women movement on the women's rights started. And it was in 1848, the first women conference took place in Seneca Falls in United States of America. This feminist movement evolved out of the social groups that were advocating for reforms. In fact, whatever the kind of discussions the movement or the women who came together and worked, it all happened in a very informal setting, and later culminated into a formal, whatever the kind of act or laws or movements and schools of thought, like feminist school. There are different schools of thought. I will just spend a couple of minutes on that also a little later. And the major issues covered in the women's rights movement during this period of 1848 1920, that is the kind of the period where every grave issues of concern were very much presented by the women's movement, particularly in the West, and then only it came to India. India had a different, because we were colonized, and our concerns were the nationalist movement, and the priority was freedom, and therefore entire society was focusing on the national freedom, and therefore it was the women's movement as such in India started in the mid 60s, etc. But it was inbuilt in the national movement also. I can't say simply that they were not discussed, because when you go back and read the literature and also the kind of contributions made by the women freedom fighters, you would definitely appreciate that they had contributed to a series of issues that we will be discussing shortly. And so women's rights is the fight for the idea that women should have equal rights, the quote unquote, nothing else. It is like you have to have equal rights with men. Leave alone the biological differences, you don't bring that at all. It is a different concern. It is naturally given responsibility. Again, naturally given social responsibilities for women, if at all, if they wish to marry and get children delivered, then it is the reproductive rights questions will come. Otherwise, you can find now the women occupying in different, in almost all the places, and sometimes excel than men, and therefore there is no need to divide that this is the men field and this is the women field. But what is actually, that is what I say. But when I say, it is coming to my mind, recently there was an advertisement in Tamil Nadu in one of the colleges, it's a men's college, that only male faculty, it was a vacancy position advertised for faculty position, and it was mentioning that only male candidates to apply. So this is what we say, the gaps. Similarly, in the Indian Oil Corporation, when I was sitting and talking to some colleagues there in connection with some projects, it was appearing in the paper that they were calling for some chemical engineering, production engineering division. There again, it was mentioned only men can apply, or men only apply. It was long back, Sudha Murthy fought with Jari Datta to questioning why only men apply, and then she started with all procedural formalities, she joined, and she excelled also and proved herself and came out and started contributing to this Infosys. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is that laws are there, legal rights are there, women's rights are there, human rights. We also claim that women's rights are human rights, but there are social expectations that the women should do only this and men should do this. And if there is any change, they can label it as deviations or deviant behavior, etc. So we have to keep that in mind. And as CSOs, we need to focus on that, as to be very, very careful when we are talking about gender rights. We have to be clear with that. And if in one area, if you contradict, then it will be a kind of insensitivity. Recently, I think you would all hear in Tamil Nadu, at least, people would have read the paper that the State Commission for Women was making, because I know, because I was also associated with that cyber crime issues when the program was held here in Trichy city. I was also there. And in the next day, the same program was held at Chennai. There was an interview, and she was telling that the women need not have to fix their pictures there in the DP in the mobile phone. And now she's getting a lot of criticism from the people as to why always pointing to women. It is, you have to teach your men also to not to do that, instead of again and again saying that you remain safe yourself. That is what the meaning it is being conveyed. So maybe in the traditional context, or in the context where I don't know which context she mentioned this, because she should be a highly sensitive person towards this, being the State Commission for Women chair. But unfortunately, this had been kind of social media, put into social media criticism, and a lot of views and cries going on. So that is what I'm saying. When you are conscious of gender conscious, you have to be completely conscious. You can't stay in one stand. You would support a particular thing, and the next you may not. So legal provisions in the context, whether it is international or national context, they very much approve the gender equality. So over the history, this has taken the form of gaining property rights. It started with the equal rights, and where major 4 areas: property, equal property rights and women's suffrage. You know, women were denied with the voting rights till the early 20th century and 19th century, and therefore you had to fight for that. And that also started the rights for voting rights for women, and rights for reproduction, like whether right to abortion. Now there is a reverse happening there in US, but they had earlier fought for reproductive rights. It includes abortion rights and the spacing, how many children to have, not to have, etc., etc., and the right to work for equal pay. See, this is again a myth. Right to leave alone the formal sector, and that too kind of the administrative position, we may not be getting discriminated as women and men. But in the informal sector, in the nature of, for example, if you take construction work, there is a complete division of labor. Like the men will be attending to masonry work, the women will be attending to the helping kind of work. And this is true with agriculture work also. It's extremely the kind of total manual work, like the transplantation, weeding, etc., will be attended by the women, or are supposed to be, I mean, divided to be attended by women, whereas men will be doing all the other spade work. And they also go to the extent of claiming that it is, they will be working with machines, tractors, or the plow, etc., but they are treated or perceived as hard work, and they claim higher wages than the women's work, who sacrifice the entire manual labor, but at the end of the day gets very low wages. And you know the kind of issues that are happening there in the informal sector, where the workers' rights are being violated, particularly when it comes to the question of women's labor. It is always perceived as cheap labor, and you will be hiring them, whether it's in agriculture or in the industrial sector, to a kind of marginalized work, which doesn't command higher wage. So that is why there was a focus on the right to work for equal pay also. So these 4 important areas were the priorities in the beginning, when the women's rights movement started in 1848 until the 1920. And in the process, in the Seneca Falls Declaration, what happened? They were pushing for abolition of slavery, and it was all in the US. The amendment also happened at the respective years, and the temperance, the women's suffrage, child labor laws, etc. So having said so, like the women's movement really paved the way, and these women's movements subsequently contributed to theory building. Whatever the kind of issues cropped up there in that perspective discussions and also the period, they started formulating theories, and they emerged into feminist theories. So that is why this women's studies very much constitute as a discipline where you have huge literature being accumulated over the years, and it has to be taken forward and transformed to the classroom. And to just mention a few theories, I can say the very theory which is in the limelight is intersectional feminism, where it says that gender inequality per se is not just affecting the women, but it intersects with other variables, be it the social categorization like race, here in its caste, class, and sexuality. And you can't just say that what I should say, the kind of gender equality in the society, be it right from your sex ratio to participation, decision making, what are different areas in which you really find gender inequality and discrimination biases. And you can't just state that will affect only the men, women, and of course the LGBT communities, but it intersects with other. Therefore, what I'm trying to say is that if you belong to whatever the so-called socially defined caste system in Indian context, you have different hierarchy in which the lowest hierarchical caste people will be facing double discrimination or triple discrimination as being economically backward, socially backward, and also women. So that is what I mean, the intersection feminism. And you also have radical feminists who believe in the fact that patriarchy is the root cause of gender equality. So each school of thought, they were believing in the particular. Say, liberal feminists believe in achieving gender equality through political and legal reform, and Marxist feminists completely believe that the gender inequality is because of the capitalist system. So these were the major areas and priorities on which they started building their theories, and we have that base, and accordingly different waves of feminism also could we're just mentioning about the 1848 to 20, and later on 1920 to 1950. In Indian context, it will be like pre and post independence. So accordingly, we can have first, second, third wave. And the first wave was focusing on, I told about the suffrage movement, where people were trying to fight for voting rights. And so it had happened mostly in UK, Canada, and United States, and they succeeded in gaining momentum from across the other, globe also, other countries in the globe, and got it sanctioned. And in equal pay was the focus in the second wave for feminism, movement, where it began in the US but spread to Europe, Asia, and focused mainly on sexuality, reproductive rights, and the wage gap. So almost liberal feminist thought, second wave feminism. And the third, attacking third wave feminism is like postmodern, which very much attacks the patriarchy. And patriarchy is, I'm not saying that patriarchy is present only with men, it is very much present with women, transgender persons, whoever the human beings. And it is associated with power. And whoever is powerful, in terms of caste, you may say upper caste. In terms of income or class, it is upper class. In terms of religion, the majority religion. In terms of race, the white versus black. So in terms of ethnic, the so-called the marginalized, the tribal communities, etc. So the third wave feminism was very much focusing on that, and attributes patriarchy for everything. So ultimately, the very objective of feminism is that it takes the grassroots sentiments to decision-making places. So that is the very objective, because you can't exclude the people who are the marginalized, the socially excluded, be it scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, the women, the differently abled population, or transgender, whatever. So the first, in the movement itself, in the beginning, it was all the middle class women and upper caste women sitting and discussing about the kind of issues, and therefore the priorities were like on reproductive rights and other voting rights, etc. But the concerns of the grassroots women, you all know more than me because you're all working with the people. So their priority is that the very daily work, they have to get work. For example, I was talking about construction work, and in Trichy we have, where we are actually having this program. Uh, mm, Always you can witness in the morning around 7 o'clock onwards, or even 6:30 onwards, people assembling from different parts of this district, even from other districts, neighboring districts also coming and assembling around thousands, where both men and women will present, and the contractor or the mediate, whoever intermediaries will come and recruit and assign the work to be executed in different places. And in these women, it is not a guarantee that having traveled for about 100 kilometers that you will get the work. So I found in my own work, I mean study, that people in Tamil Nadu, people may be knowing Thoraguchi, which is around 80 kilometers, and you are not staying very proper Thoraguchi. You may be coming from different neighborhood villages, and therefore roughly talking 150 kilometers up and down. But in the morning around 4 o'clock, they start everything, complete the work, because in the again the patriarchally governed family system, the women are supposed to do all the unpaid care work and come to paid work also. Therefore, they try to kind of finish that work and come to the field, assemble here with all expectation that they will get work. But at the end of the day, because the requirements would be like this demand supply gap, like only 800 are required. If there are 200 plus, maybe 100 the person contractor may try to accommodate. The other 100 they have to go back. So, and there again it will be like men versus women. The men will be given the priority because the society still sees that the men's income is going to be the primary income. That is what the society also goes in that ad. So this is what I mean. There is uncertainty in the informal sector as to whether you get work next day. Thanks to MNRGA, here the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Scheme is at least ensuring 100 days of employment to these working class in the rural context. And so, therefore, that is the priority. We may not have to mistook feminism in a different perspective. The very perspective is to ensure equality and find women placed equally to men in different fields wherever it is possible. And so the agenda on working class women, and that they have to come out of poverty, and pushes women into undesirable socioeconomic position. They question why women continue to, because UN says that women's poverty as women's face. That means more women are being affected by poverty than men. And if there is any minimum food is available, then it is always possible or witnessed that the woman or the mother will just distribute to the other members of the family and she will starve. And that is why women's poverty has a women's face. And this, therefore, these feminists who are engaged here as in a moment wanted to address that, and also not just talking about the work, mobilizing them to a decision-making process, but build their agency and align with the labor movement also. Because only when you are a collective, you'll be able to win the whatever the kind of demands it will be. And again, more important thing is that this feminism, I was just talking about radical, the Marxist, the liberal feminist, etc., intersection feminism. So ultimately, though their priorities or the areas of focus or the belief were different, the entire focus is about ensure equality, and therefore they have a common shared vision and multiple identities, and also they um, um, share a common vision. Given that, of course, if you take India into account or any other countries for sake, there were the base or phase rather, where complete resource crunch, and you have to build for example, in India, the colonial India had lost all the resources and Britishers took away, and therefore we had to start from scratch. And in that period, priorities would be like strengthening your resources and kind of focusing on the welfare of the people. You have to ensure that people get 3 square meal a day. That is what. So poverty was widespread, and therefore your approach was to take care of the welfare, well-being. And therefore this approaches toward gender equality also started moving from welfare to equity. So the moment you realize that, okay, no longer they should be treated as beneficiaries or just the welfare, they were part of the system. And therefore, equity was, equity here, it seems like complete denial of rights for women, or complete denial or exclusion from the development process or participation in the development process, whatever. And therefore, your duty is to bring them to the equity foot, and therefore they will also be equally be competent with other gender, and therefore equity focus was the second approach. And the third approach was anti-poverty approaches, wherein was almost in 60s, you could witness a number of systems, whether it is the DOCRA system, this called the TRISM, and later on SGSY, all such things. So it was to bring the women out, or bring people in poverty to out of that, and therefore whatever strategies, approaches they followed, were focusing on, like the public distribution system also emerged, and the anti-poverty was the focus. Then it shifted to, it was shifting to the efficiency approach, wherein you started weighing that a man and a woman or other genders are appointed, they have to deliver as efficient as possible. And accordingly, what has to be done? You need to provide them space to prove themselves, to optimize the resources in their disposal. And the efficiency approach, they later shifted to empowerment. Here it was realized that all the time, almost all the 4 welfare, equity, anti-poverty, efficiency approaches were only seeing women and the so-called marginalized communities as the beneficiaries of development. The development will take place, somebody will contribute, and the what we call in economics the transfer payments. So something which is there already mobilized by through various revenue sources, including tax revenues, the state will transfer that to the women or the other marginalized communities. But this was heavily criticized that we need to also, everybody is born with 2 hands and 1 mouth, and they are resources. So they have to be recognized as resource. And then the empowerment approach came in, wherein it was recognized that it is not simply the women are treated as beneficiaries, but their agency must be recognized, and power has to be shared. So that is empower, giving power to everyone. But actually, empowerment is used in a different parlance, in a different meaning. But empower means giving power. So whether we are experiencing that are a different question, but I'm just saying that in this empowerment approach, it was recognized to give power and share power to women. And there are different concepts also: power to, power with, power, power of, etc. Then the gender mainstreaming approach. Almost we are in this era where the question of women was also disputed, because it is not just the women. There are other gender also, the whole lot of LGBT communities, the lesbian, gay, the transsexuals and transgenders, and queer, and now you have intersex and A sex also. That is what LGBTQI plus. So it go on increase. So now the question is to, like, whatever was available in the patriarchal context, it was even now also to still believe that men alone can be the breadwinner of the family, and he has to be the head of the family, etc. Leave alone whether, I mean, some single women or women-headed households. So whatever, whether it is a state or the family, the society, whatever is being discussed in the policy context, etc., where keeping men as the center and all the facilities, the resources, etc., were also centering around the men's needs, men's requirements, etc. And therefore, gender mainstreaming was thought of. So now, when you are thinking of the needs of men, it is also necessary that the other needs must be recognized. So it is not that if a building is being constructed, it was earlier, or even a furniture is produced, it was keeping in mind the needs of men only, and the height, the podium of any kind of stage also. So I'm just giving a few examples. There are many other examples where men's needs, women's needs, or any other disabled differently needs were not recognized. And several times people who are short or who are women, not as men in terms of height or other aspects will differ. And therefore, gender mainstreaming. So here, in the policy context, or you're all CSOs here, in your own developmental agenda, you might have implemented the gender mainstreaming approaches, where you always do a gender analysis, and based on the reflections from the gender analysis, of course, it will be part of the gender auditing and gender budgeting. Also, you will be uh, locating or identifying the gender mainstreaming strategies. So there are different schools of thought as to whether mainstream gender or first let us, even in the UGC context, we in women's studies, our course is called gender studies, but we are still calling women's studies department as women's studies, because UGC also feels that till certain stage, let women be empowered totally, and then start including men also. Like even in the UGC capacity building for women managers in higher education, people did represent that men should also be part of the capacity building. But it was very particular from the very UGC guidelines that it has to be focusing on women. Therefore, gender mainstream to certain extent, till it gets the level playing field, let it focus on women. That is what. So here again, gender mainstreaming is, you always take the actual existing field which centered around, at least I told that, men. So trying to take whatever the kind of developmental aspects, it will be like you have to also perform like men. It has to be like both ways. Men should take some of the work that the women have been doing for a long, and women should also take up the work that the men had been doing for a long. But unless, like, always men's work will be taken as a model, and women are supposed to, whether it is dressing or, you see, the women will be into men's dress always. Like when I come to the question of I'm saying dress also, they are following the men's. And also any chair you occupy, the masculine behavior, tactics, the administration would be delivered when you are not a gender sensitive leader. So this is what kind of system that is providing the society. And we have to really attack in the sense influence the social system, wherein the deep-rooted, gendered, stereotyped norms continue to exist and pull down the women from being in the center and contribute, or even if they contribute, the system tries to sideline, marginalize them. So as CSOs, we have the responsibility to bring the contributions of women to the center and claim that the women are also equally contributing. It is not that the women should always, it is expected that they have to complete the responsibilities of unpaid care work if they want to go and engage in paid work. So this issue of double burden or dual burden should be done away with when men and women share the responsibilities, so that you are easing out the women also to equally participate in public life and contribute And that is what I mean to here coming to the human rights based approach. So having just given the kind of a prelude on this subject of perspectives, we are going to now spend a few minutes on human rights based approach and then move on to the historical context and the contemporary context of women's rights. So here, human rights based approach is based on the principles of four important things. Transparency. So when you're talking about human rights and human rights based approach, there has to be transparency. You can't be hidden in your approaches, whatever. You have to show you're accountable. Transparency is followed by accountability. So you're accountable.
Madam, sorry for the interruption. PPT, I think it's not coming.
Oh, let me check. Can you see it out?
No, I think you have to share, madam. Not yet share.
No, I have shared already, sir. It is even saying stop sharing here.
It is visible, but
It's not coming. PPT is not coming. We can't see.
Right, sir. Right.
You haven't seen so far.
No. Just I think last 5 minutes only there is a problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Let me go out through, share again, sir.
Yes, madam. Now it is coming.
Okay.
You can make it to full screen if it is possible.
Yeah, when I make it full screen only, I think it is not moving.
Now it is okay, madam.
Okay.
Now it is okay. Good. Right. Thank you.
Okay. So this is what I've just started. If the participants have anything to ask, please stop me and ask. Otherwise, I'll be just keep talking. So now coming to this human rights based approach, I was talking that there are 4 to 5 important principles. I'll be in detail explaining that. Transparency, accountability, equality, non-discrimination, and participation. Participation is very important, and inclusion also. So as CSOs, generally, I'm talking about whatever the area in which you are working. Of course, you being associates of this project would be definitely working on environment, women empowerment, climate ventures, etc. And wherein the first stage, you need to identify the issues. So I already told that we are here from different states of India, and the issues would also be different. If you take here in Tamil Nadu, declining sex ratio is the major concern right from the beginning. Like it is not happening now, and thanks to all the affirmative actions being taken by the government and this the kind of sensitivity being created by the CSOs working in the respective areas, that it has been addressed. It has got addressed in certain areas, but the unfortunate development is that there are new districts as per the 2011 census with a declining sex ratio, particularly Kadalur, Perambalur, Neriyallur, which were not earlier figured in the declining sex ratio districts at all. So this is what I mean. There may be in different other contexts, child marriage may be an issue. Even in Tamil Nadu, we have certain packets where child marriages do happen. One of my PhD scholars is working on that. And it is quite pathetic to know that despite the system, the stringent system being implemented, and the intervention being implemented, you continue to hide yourself. And particularly during this pandemic COVID-19 pandemic, child marriages were on the increase, and you all read in the papers. And dowries again, if you go to the southern part of Tamil Nadu, here in Tamil Nadu context, I'm saying, it may be true in other parts of the country also. In southern, the dowry is it has become it has got regularized, I should say. If you want to marry, conduct a marriage for a daughter, then you have to have so much. Whether you belong to a labor class or a capitalist class, doesn't matter. You have to mobilize some jewels and also take care of the entire expenses of marriage, etc. So that is why there is a link also, leave alone the southern districts where dowry is an issue, but it is equally happening the child, particularly the female feticide and female infanticide earlier. It's happening in the very backward districts like Dharmaburi, Krishnagiri, the west part of that also. But the entire issue, whether it is dowry or female infanticide or child marriage, they are connected. So being people who are there working in the grassroots would have got the connections among these social issues, and accordingly go and attend the very root of it. That is the priority for the people working the grassroots. So therefore, you need to identify the social issue. Second stage, you have to design the program. It may be in any form, because you will be applying the project to some funding agencies, and funding agency will also prescribe some terms and conditions, and therefore the ultimate aim is to address this issue, social issue. So it can be designed either as a complete qualitative kind of intervention, or conduct a study, do a survey, and then bring interventions, whatever. And it depends on funding agencies where. Stage 3, you will be implementing the program, and stage 4, monitoring and evaluation. So on all these 4 stages, this has to be there. The principles of transparency and quality must be followed. So this rights-based approach framework can be explained in a very professional way, wherein you have 2 kind of people in a particular system operating. That is right holders on the one hand, duty bearers. All the citizens are right holders. Even the duty bearers are also part of right holders, and they are the citizens. So in any system, social system, economic system, and political system, you have 2 subjects. One can be right holders, other is duty bearers. And so the right holders, they are supposed to know, claim, and realize their rights. And it is the duty of the duty bearers, mostly the state, is to respect and protect the rights and fulfill obligations. So if I was just mentioning about the dowry or female feticide or child marriages, whatever, these are the issues. So in fact, it was revealed in the study which my student is working. In close by to Trichy, there is one district called Perambalur district. There is child marriages are intense, and there it was informed that it is a social menace, and we are going to really take action against whoever is following this menace. And therefore the state was the district administration was very stringent, appointing people as watchdogs in different places, both the community volunteers as well as their staff, and created awareness, and whatever the facilities, the helpline numbers, etc., available, whom to contact, etc., given. And the rights are also given that you can't allow any child marriages to happen. And if the girl is studying and the girl has the right to continue her education, and even if the parents pressurize her to get into marriage, she has the right to come out of it. And to our surprise, around in 1 year, there are around 400 marriages were stopped, and several marriages, the girls themselves, they called to the helpline, and at the time of marriage, they stopped. In fact, knowing very well the families that this is a criminal, it's an offense, they will see to that the marriage will happen to this particular girl who is either below 18 or just studying school, etc. without any ceremonial preparations. It will be a very calm atmosphere. They'll just go to the temple and finish the marriage and come, and nobody would notice that the marriage had happened. This is what to escape from the kind of legal provisions provided in the society, and therefore every individual citizen should know the provisions, and they climb and realize the right. That is what in this case the students themselves stopped, because they were given awareness there in the schools as to whom to contact. Their contact numbers were also given, and that is what it was done. So the duty bearers, of course, the district administration, the child welfare committee, and the social protection officers, etc. They were all around. Whenever there is any problem, they will immediately go and present. That is what the duty bearers. And therefore, the call comes, they don't delay anymore. They'll immediately communicate to the respective whether police station or whatever, and try to help the protect the rights and fulfill the applications. So in the process, the right holders empowerment is important, and they have to be given the capacity building. Like the duty bearers also, they may not be knowing everything. So every stage there has to be training, capacity building, updating of the knowledge of legal provisions, legislations, amendments, etc., etc. And in the process, they have to have accountability, equality, non-discrimination, participation. There are sometimes it may be a relative's girl also getting married. I'm talking in the context of child marriage. So being duty bearer, they should not. That is what I mean, not discrimination. Or you belong to an upper caste and this is happening in a lower, socially defined lower caste, and so you can't just take it for granted. Therefore, this guiding principles must be followed. So in the rights-based approach, the guiding principles are, I already mentioned some of them. It has to be like, it has to treat people as citizens, like every individual in the society, the country, the nation, or citizens. So people are citizens, holders of rights, and capable of claiming their rights. So you have to believe, the duty bearers should believe and exercise their right. Expect the citizens to exercise their rights. And full citizenship for all, through the empowerment of discriminated groups of persons, including active participation of political, economic, social, and cultural life. It is not that being a woman you can't do, being a disabled you can't participate, you being a lower caste you can't participate. No, that is what it was there. The earlier context of temple entry was denied for particular communities, and that were all thanks to all our people who fought against the social reformers, and now it is possible. So that when you recognize everyone, every individual as citizen, and they hold full citizenship, you can't discriminate on any ground. Our constitution also plays the same. Applying all rights as universal and indivisible human rights. Say, like, it is not that this particular law is for this and this. No, it is applicable to, once law is enacted, it is a universal and part of human rights, and encompassing multiple dimensions. So any law can be, I think in the international treaties, we will be discussing all this, the civil, political, economic, social, environmental rights to rights, both individually and collectively. So any, in a particular point of time, the rights per se will be including all these, maybe civil right, political right, economic, social, environmental, cultural rights. Accordingly, the specific component of exercising the power to be attached. Participation and access to decision-making process as the basis for active citizenship and sustained multi-stakeholder partnership. So this, I already told, the participation is very important. Only when we participate, being CSOs, we must always invite people to participate in the area where this particular project is being implemented. Without their participation, active involvement, it is difficult. Therefore, that is what this participation decision-making process. I do have some of the NGOs working here on environmental issues. And when we went there to that field, we could see that the watershed committee was consisting of women and representation from the marginalized communities, and representation of the tribal communities, working class, and the farmers, etc., etc. So that is what a committee. So that what you call the lessons and experiences of these people who are already in the field will be. Yesterday, I think I got one WhatsApp message forwarded wherein the construction of the building will be on, and there was a kind of an artificial, manual, not a machine, lifting that particular sack of cement. This one particular man will be pulling it down. The sack will go out, and then it will jump to one stack where another person sitting there and standing there, and he will pull and it will go up. And it was shared with a note that it is out of syllabus. So no engineering, out of syllabus in the engineering. So no engineering could represent this particular technology, where they ultimately they are also doing the same with where the machine was also lifting the cement to the upper racks, etc., floors. But here it was manually done. It's very interesting seeing that pictures. So it was that is what I mean. I think I brought to some point connected to this. Anyway, so non-discrimination and equal access of all groups and persons with a focus on their specificities based on age, gender, functionary, social, gender diversities, and politics. So that is what in the beginning itself we saw that discrimination shouldn't be there, and non-discrimination is the order of the day, and that is the right-based approach. Inclusivity. When you say non-discrimination, it is inclusive. So by identifying, addressing multiple discriminations based on ableism, like disability, ageism, the senior versus young, classism, working class versus capitalist class, homophobia, the homosexual relationship, racism, sexism, transphobia, and xenophobia. That is about a person from other countries, among others. So when we discuss about a particular issue, for example, if it is tourism, we have to take into account the kind of diverse countries from which people come, and accordingly the facilities to be arranged. The Indian context may be different, but if you are opening it to foreign country visitors, the facilities, particularly the basic need facilities, must be opened such that it will be accommodating to all the citizens across the globe. Accountability, promoting accessible, transparent, and effective mechanisms of accountability by right holders. Like we are also accountable. We always, being right, citizens, we always question and ask for rights. But at the same time, we too have, being citizens, have the right to deliver. We have the duty to deliver, and therefore we are accountable. And that is what I was talking about the State Commission for Women making a comment that the DP should not be, girls should not face this DP on the mobile phone. The criticism from people was pointing to the state expenses towards this particular State Commission, where government money is being, taxpayers' money is being spent, and this woman is making such comment. So that is what I mean, accountability. So we are also accountable. Whatever the money is coming from, it is the public money. It is not the individual money, and therefore we are accountable for every paisa we spend, whether it is the CSO's project or even this project which we are talking here. Transparency and access to information within available information and should be accessible format for all. Many a time, information will be available but not access. So that should be there, including for groups and persons with one second. And do not harm. That is analyzing and avoiding unintended negative impact in terms of human rights, including exclusion, stigmatization. Very often it happens, like for women, there are still, we are saying that they should not be discriminated, but there are various areas in which women are being discriminated. They are not supposed to participate in the decision-making process. They can't I mean, they get excluded during their menstrual days, and there are stigma associated with that. If anything happens accidentally in a particular case, they may even connect that with the person who went there during the menstrual cycle. So all these stigma and several other contexts also stigma is one important issue to be addressed. So these are all the guiding principles in the rights-based approach. And now coming to the women's rights quickly, because already it is 4. I have to rush up because you have the other 2 discussions. I have changed to slide. If it doesn't come, please inform me. So this women's rights or human rights, that is what it is being claimed. And every woman, it is a human right. And when I say that it is women's rights is human rights, whatever the human rights are there, they are also the women's rights. So they have the right to health, right to securities, right to adequate housing, right to freedom from discrimination, right to privacy, right to food, right to water, right to clean environment, and freedom from child labor, because many a time due to poverty, the child is being sent to labor market. You must have worked on that area also and witnessed how the children in their age below 14 or 15 are being sent to either full-time or part-time employment. And we, in our own study, when we conducted a study with the textile workers of course, you all in Tamil Nadu, textile hub districts are there: Coimbatore, Tirupur, Erode, Karur, Madurai, Rajapalayam, all those. Dindigul also, many textile mills. And you have, of course, you need girls, young girls to attend some work which will be delivered with a higher productivity than the elders or adults. Therefore, they prefer the young girls. And this is the demand side. On the supply side also, poverty is the big issue. Parents' priority is not education of the girls, and they don't believe in the education of girls. Then the issue is how to meet their requirements, 2 square or 1 square meal a day. And therefore, they in fact, as they starve, the below poverty line households, they starve. And in that context, and they send the wards, like whether it is 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old. Yes? Anybody is asking anything? Okay. So, irrespective of the age, but below the age, after 18 only, you can go to the labor market, but below that, they'll be here, and you have the system in the textile sector. They will be enrolled as apprentices also, and they'll be paid apprentice trainee fee only, not the actual wage. And in other cases, they enroll as labor, but under the camp labor scheme. Earlier it was called Sumangali scheme or whatever the other names. Now it is called camp labor, where below 14, 13, 12, etc. were found in our study. That's what I'm trying to say. So you are talking about freedom from child labor, but child labor, they inflate the age and register there. When you go on paper, it may not be showing that there are child laborers engaged, but when you go probe further and ask about when did she complete her 5th class or 6th class, then you will be able to notice her age and extract her age. So, and right to adequate standard, freedom from forced labor, right to educate, etc. So, having said so, that is the women's rights or human rights, women are entitled to equal participation in terms of political, economic, and social equality. Women's rights should not be seen as a special right. So, since you have already accepted that it is a human right, you don't have to say it as a special right, though it is actually seen so. They are human rights enshrined in international human rights treaties and other documents, and which include the following. Again, I have already mentioned: freedom from discrimination, living free from violence, slavery, because these were the issues. Slavery were all the issues. Some 40 years back, if you could go to the villages, you will see the entire family will be working with the the landlord. And they don't have their own house, their own stove to cook, because everything is supplied by the very landlord community, and total exploitation. They don't have anything on their own. Later on, thanks to Concealing Act and this tenancy reforms, etc., that could bring them some land. And even now, it was another study which we did, agriculture transformation in the nearby district, Manimekalai, and some dry and wet villages, where we could see that around 300 and odd families, where particularly the scheduled caste communities, they are not owning actually, having half an acre to 1 acre land, but the pata is not in their name. It was all donated because you have been tilling this land for a long. And when the land ceiling act came, it was all given in their name. Given to these, maybe not registered in the name, but asking them to till the land. Therefore, even for 100 years together, the land owned by cultivated by these people are not actually owned by them. That means they can't sell off the land and enjoy whatever is required. Then right to life, freedom from torture, right to education, right to privacy, access to health, etc., which I already explained. And these 12 rights, important rights, that is to do with certain specific requirements and conditions. So you have right to free legal aid. You have the legal services authorities. If you are facing any legal concerns, any women for that sake or men, they can approach the free legal aid services authority. In every district, you have that district legal services authority. You can approach that, and they will definitely counsel and call the opposite parties also, and you can get that legal aid, free legal aid. And the right to privacy for anything, like in the era of this digital media, right to privacy is very much in question, but you do have. And that is why you have to have the basic needs provided at the workplaces or the schools or colleges, the learning education centers, etc. Right to virtual compliance, right to no arrest, because there are such stipulations. You can't arrest a woman at any time you come. Right to not being called to the police station. Similarly, right to equal pay, right against harassment at workplace, right to anonymity. If you don't want to give your name, you need not have to. Right against domestic violence, right to get maternity benefits, right against female feticide. Yeah, even if you are forced by the family members to bought the female baby fetus, you have every right to protect it from this right against female feticide, right to equal share in the inheritance, etc. So all these are happening with the work of the international bodies, UN bodies. So the important UN body which is working to protect the women's rights is the UN Convention on the Status of Women, simply and shortly called as CSW. It meets every year and places the agenda gathered from different parts of the country. And you can also part of it. Again, every year they will invite, and they meet in Geneva or New York. This Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, they'll be informing us. And so this commission will always be preparing the recommendations and the reports to the ECOSOC and make recommendations to the council on urgent problems requiring immediate attention in the field of women's rights. If there is a grave issue of concern, that will be taken care of as a subject to be discussed in that particular year, and it will be report will be submitted. Promote implementation of the principles that men and women shall have equal rights. And it was Commission's mandate expanded in 1887 and 95 by the council. And this council drafted the early International Convention on Human Rights of the following: the 1951 Convention on International Labour Organizations, 1953 Convention on Political Rights of Women, 1957 Convention on Nationality of Married Women, where it was the first international agreements on women's rights in marriage, and the 1962 Convention on Consent of Marriage, minimum age for marriage and registration of marriages, etc. And in 1972, the Commission recommended that 1975 be designated as International Women's Year. And if you could analyze the developments of women's policies, instruments, interventions, programs, etc., in the Indian context, it is all after 75. I'll talk about the Towards Equality report also. So it was coincided with the 75 UN declaring 75 as the International Women's Year, and the entire decade 75 to 85 is the International Decade, Women Decade. And in 75, First World Conference on Women. So we had 4 conferences. The first Women Conference in Mexico in 75, second in Copenhagen in 79, the third Nairobi 85, and fourth in Beijing in 1985. So this fourth Beijing conference, there were 12 critical areas discussed, and that formed the basis for the entire, what I should say, the national policy for women empowerment. I have been moving the slides. Please inform if it doesn't move. The Beijing Platform for Action, 12 critical areas of concern. The first and foremost, the women and poverty. So these 12 areas, 12 critical areas, very much spelled out there in the Beijing Platform Action, were taken as the 12 critical areas that the policy, national policy for women empowerment also. So women and poverty, education and training for women, women and health, very important priority areas, prioritized areas. Violence against women, women and armed conflict, women and the economy, women in power and decision making, institutional mechanisms for the advancement of women, human rights for women, women and the media, women and the environment, and the girl child. We were just talking about female infanticide and female feticide, and therefore the girl child was also included as the important 12th critical area. And so coming to this international treaties and conventions, it is listed here. You can go and either refer the manual shared by the project department, or you can even click this and understand the provisions under each. I'll slightly this one elaborate further. This Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 formed the basis for everything. So it was human rights was the starting point, and as I already repeatedly put it, human rights and women rights are the same. And therefore, we say in this perspective, human rights perspective, the women's rights also. Then Convention on the Political Rights, Convention on Civil, Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Because in the name of cultural rights or culture, there have been several deviations denying the gender rights. So that was also. Then the most important declaration on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women called CEDAW 1967, and that came into force in 1979 and then 81 actually. Then you have a declaration of democracy, optional protocols, etc. Let me spend some time on CEDAW. That is important document, and therefore we only concentrate on that and move to Indian perspectives. CEDAW adopted UN by the UN General Assembly, wherein the Convention on the Political Rights of Women 52, Convention on the Nationality of Married Women, Convention on Consent of 62, all these were very much suggested by the UN Committee on Commission on Status of Women, and discussed here in the context of included there in the CEDAW also. So this is an international human rights treaty on women issues, and it came into force in 1979 by the resolution, etc. Women. What is this CEDAW? Like it acts as a, like I should say, it established in the text of convention. It is monitoring agency only, no enforcement powers. Convention on elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, and there will be 23 independent experts nominated by respective governments, and the term will be 4. And every member country, there are about 187 countries, they are supposed to submit the report as per the CEDAW protocol. And if they fail, that will be when you are invited to present, then your name will be spelled out that these countries have been submitted this report in this particular period, etc. And they meet 2 to 3 times in a year in Geneva, New York. And so the very important functions of CEDAW committee is to issue general recommendations, monitoring the states parties' compliance, because when you accept and you are a signatory in the document and treaty, you are supposed to follow, and therefore the compliance will be checked. And it also decides cases, conducts inquiries under the absolute. So these are all about the brief about the international conventions and the kind of important conventions which is connected to the women. Coming to the Indian context, the constitutional rights, the very constitution ensures equality. So the state, it says that the state shall not discriminate against any citizen of India on the ground of sex, Article 15. The state is empowered to make any special provisions for women. That is what you have some special laws being enacted by the respective. In fact, the anti-ragging committee law was enacted by Government of Tamil Nadu first. Similarly, the prohibition of crimes against women, Tamil Nadu law against protection of women was enacted exclusively by Tamil Nadu government. Later on, you could get this Criminal Amendment Act or other act, Sexual Harassment Prevention Act, etc. But in every state, for that matter, not necessarily Tamil Nadu, there will be specific laws you must be knowing. So the state here includes government only, state or central government. So they have the special provision for women. In other words, this provision enables the state to make affirmative discrimination in favor of women. Affirmative discrimination, like past discrimination, people say. Reservation, or you give in Tamil Nadu, the city buses are free, and you have single girl child scholarship, all such very affirmative discrimination in favor of women. No citizen shall be discriminated against or be ineligible for any employment. You can't say deny, like I was telling, no, only men can apply. You can't. As per the constitutional provision, you can't say that women should not apply. And this is unconstitutional. And also, Article 16 say no citizen shall be, so traffic in 23(1) says traffic in human beings and forced labor are prohibited. The state to secure men and women equally the right to be active means of livelihood. So men and women, you can't say that women being women, you can you can take care of the household work, and being man, I'll go out. No, it is equally the livelihood right is equally be there with women and men. And so taking into, I was talking about the status of the Commission on Status of Women at the global context. Whereas in the Indian context, during the 70s, it was the first survey or study done by a group of women in the women's movement, and brought out a report called Towards Equality Report 1974, and that remained as an eye-opener to understand the kind of issues that the Indian women are facing. And this was placed to all the MPs and MLOs and to shake the decision-making bodies as to why. Because this, there were 3 important areas of concern which was brought out by this report way back in 1974, talking about declining sex ratio even now, but it was there in those period also. Declining work participation of women, again, currently in discussion, and it is worst during the pandemic. It has come down to 19%, below 20%. That means out of 100, only 19 women were working. That is what, because during the pandemic, those who were, often it is said they will be the last to be hired and first to be fired. And the same occurred there in the pandemic context also. And there are a number of reasons. Recently, there was a BBC interview to me asking the reasons for the declining reporting back to Infosys, okay, TCS, I believe, some IT companies. Several women, when they asked to come back, so they were working home, but from home was the concept of the pandemic. And it was, of course, not very comfortable to all women because it never distinguished you from the private work and the official work. And you are expected to be attending the household responsibilities at any point of time, thanks to the work from home, where except the meetings, you can just be flexible. But at the same time, that's what they said, shadow pandemic. Also, there are like domestic violence because people often find fault with these women who are working from home as if they are not working. So this family had enjoyed the presence of women for more than 2 years or 3 years. And to a certain extent, the women must have also enjoyed, because every day you have to completing all the responsibilities, run to get into the buses and go to the office, and back home you have to attend all. So certain level of comfort and flexibility were there because of working from home concept. And therefore, there was a kind of at least 20 to 30% women not reporting when they called back to the office. And it is going to pay havoc because these women enjoyed economic independence. Now they are going to be soup, and the major reason would be because these women, unlike other communities, if at all, some percentage would be very low income, and I think this 25% may not be falling into that low income group. So in the relatively better income group, whether upper or middle income groups, it is told to the women that it is enough if they stay back, and the income that earned by other members of the family will be sufficient. So in this context, again, it's unconstitutional because it was just told that they have equal right to participate for the livelihood. And the women, just because they are asked to come back to work to the office, they have been asked to lay off their office. So this is very dangerous in the context where we are talking about a need for more women to participate in work. And high rate of mortality and morbidity among women. So it was in 70s, both infant mortality were at peak and maternal mortality also. So now, thanks to all the medical advancement, we have brought it down, and thanks to reproductive awareness, health awareness, the institutional delivery, etc., and all sorts of nutritious. Thanks to Tamil Nadu, almost pregnancy right from the conception stage till the post partum, they take care of the government hospitals are well equipped to take care of mothers and babies. And so these were all these three important issues: sex ratio, women's participation, and morbidity and mortality. They were debated in the parliament, and of course, they enacted accordingly, say, different laws, that laws or provisions, policies, etc. Whatever the legislations which we have, PCP, NTT Act, or Equal Pay, Equal, etc., etc., the outcome of the kind of the Towards Equality report and the women's movement, they are lobbying all such things. And so 75-85 was the international decade for women, and several initiatives were made accordingly. So in a nutshell, I could say that in the international context, 1974, Declaration of New International Economic Order, and in 1979, 81, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence against Discrimination against Women, 76-85, that is the UN Decade for Women, and the 4 World Conferences, where the 95 Beijing Platform of Action was talking about the women, economic empowerment, peace, and active government intervention of women. So this is in a nutshell the international context, and of course the national context also I just explained. And see, all these, because whether it is the global context or in the national context, thanks to women's movements, which have contributed to the kind of the freedom which we enjoy. and they include the growth in autonomous women's organization, the increased awareness on women's rights, thanks to again women's movement who lobbied for various legislations, and these CSOs who brought out the awareness to the grassroots. Demand for special cells for women police officers, change in women's status, and campaigns about violence against women, etc. And as an outcome of all these, in 2001, we could get the national policy for empowerment of women also. And after that, it was not revised. And recently, 2006, there were attempts to kind of conducting the status of women report. 2015, it was all conducted. Even we were part of it, and I was part of the consultative committee. And the very 2001 policy is still where we highlighted the 12 critical areas, continue to be there and working for that. And these are the objectives of national policy. And in the current latest context, the 21st century, the women are expected to get these freedom from rights of freedom of speech, freedom from fear, freedom to vote, freedom to enslavement, freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom from torture. And accordingly, several legislations were also enacted. This torture, apart from the Domestic Violence Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, you also have another component called cruelty 498A, where it is beyond. Earlier, it was like just combined with the dowry provision, but this is not a dowry prohibition. It was a complete domestic violence, cruelty related, not domestic violence as such. So there again, you got a provision of law. So these are the women's rights in India. We talked about women's rights elsewhere total. Now they have the equal pay right, harassment from work, anonymity, etc. So what are the women's right violations? And based on these violations, the legal remedies were also brought out by Government of India. We can call them as the women's legislations, women-related legislations, women-related laws, etc. It is related to these areas. So you have identified the gaps and you wanted to enact a law. So missing of girl child, we have the PCPNDT Act, which is preventing you, you are banned to go and scan your child in the fetus to find out the sex of the child. The so-called sex selective abortions were banned, but unfortunately, reality is different. That is what I mean to say the gap. There are a number of what we call laws protecting the interest of the women and child, but unfortunately, every citizens in the society, whether it is the duty holders, including the doctors, they also should advise that they should not abort the female child, being it second baby girl or whatever. But so unfortunately, the society is patriarchal and self-preference is the norm. And therefore, the doctors also, when we met some of the doctors who are still going for abortions for unwanted pregnancy or something, people are also misused. There is a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, and that is being misused here for aborting unwanted pregnancy. Like the second girl baby, they don't want. And therefore, see how the second baby, they come to know it's a girl baby. That is the question. So, the doctors don't attend to abortion. They go to the quacks, untrained people to abort it, and that will still be complicating. And therefore, the doctors also justify saying that since it is unwanted pregnancy, we undergo, we do agree to abort it. And of course, you have a lot of amendments in the MTP Act also. So this is the gap. Like you have an act which prevents you to take to sex selective abortions. But unfortunately, the social system is so heavy, wherein the economic and social pressures, economic in the sense, the girl child is being connected to your family household expenses. The moment it is born, you feel that the girl child is going to get married and move away from the family, and you have to pay dowry, you have to attend her step different stages of life and the ceremonies, and therefore it is going to be expensive. So you feel that perspective, and that really brings and violates this is what I mean, the gaps. Dowry debts, see, because of the dowry debts, you have brought this Dowry Prohibition Act 1961, which prohibits that no dowry should be taken nor the dowry to be given. But unfortunately, it becomes a very common norm that if a marriage is fixed, irrespective of whether you belong to a lower income group or higher income group, you have to pay something or the other. So the domestic dowry debts, because of the kind of heightened atrocities in the 1950s and 60s, where a lot of women dowry deaths occurred, the Dowry Prohibition Act was enacted. But unfortunately now, even the court also justifies saying that if it is a Sridhan, then it may not be taken as the dowry. Then Domestic Violence Act, Prevention and Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Of course, if you look into the very class of age, it's very, sometimes it appears, oh, so many restrictions. But unfortunately, that is because these women face so much difficulties, every day suffered with the domestic violence. Now it has come to, but it is a civil remedy and it continues to happen. That is again the gap. That is what. It is only a minimum of 1 or 2% of the domestic violence cases come to the police station. And if you go to the police station also, again they are patriarchal and they see to that there is an act to prevent domestic violence, but the very police officials, be it a woman or a man, they themselves will declare that it is a private affair. Why you bring it to here? See, already domestic violence became a public affair, public issue. Once the act is being enacted, it has become a public issue. But still the police people, officials claim or even misguide the people, women who are coming with a domestic violence reporting. Of course, there are other intricacies. They call the man, pacify them, and of course, other sorts of issues will be there. And so there again, it's a gap. The law is there. The domestic violence prevention, protection of women from domestic violence is there, but whether it is actually working and how many of them are really coming to the protection officer, and whether the protection officer is handling it a rights perspective or pacify them to go and adopt, because the concern is family. In the Indian context, in any case, they have to uphold the sanctity of the family, that the children. Next is the concern of the children. If both parents are not together, irrespective of how tortured you are, the children's welfare, children's future are the priorities. And therefore, whether it is the neighbors or the police or the very protection officer or whoever, they will also be trying to counsel them to try to make them to continue their life. And if the extreme cases only, they will take to the court and the court will accordingly decide. Then you also had sati. Of course, these are all the very ancient practices, but we have to see whether any roots of it is still there. Recently, it was reported that there was people are encouraging sati, where that is you will be taking your life along when your husband is no more. And so thanks to all the social reformers who contributed to polish this system of sati and child marriage. I was just talking way back in 1929 itself, the ban was done, but unfortunately child marriages are continuing, and mostly child marriages are for girls only, not for boys, because the society is divided the role. The men are supposed to be the breadwinner, and therefore unless and otherwise the man is or a boy is a breadwinner, the child marriage continue to be on the male. I don't say that the female, I don't say that the male should also be brought to the male marriage, no, but it is discriminatory, and girls are being often the victims of the social issues in the name of social system pressures, etc. Female feticide, there is a law called the Prevention of Prenatal Diagnostic Care, but despite the stringent law being enacted and amended also, this there are certain code languages being used by the doctors after the scanning with ultrasound scan to reveal the baby, that if it is a male baby, they will say Monday, come on Monday. If it's a female baby, they'll say come on Friday. So you will come to know that it is a female baby. If it is said Friday, then they will pester the doctor to abort it. So this is what there is again a gap. Then education, of course, right to education is there already, and every child with 14 years, up to 14 years, they are supposed to be in the school. But what is actually, I was just mentioning about child marriage also. So 14, below 14 are there in the marriage market, and the parents feel that if they get rid of, do the child marriage for the girls, the daughters, they will get rid of this burden, quote unquote. That is what they feel. Because the moment the girl is attained monarchy, safeguarding the girls with the so-called chastity is difficult. That is what they feel. And therefore, they often put this blame on the children, and they get them married off. And so education, there is a right to education, but at the same time, there are gaps. That missing link is often like there is a gap between the actual legislation being passed and actual practices, social practices in the society. And forced evictions and exclusion. Many a time, even in the domestic violence cases, you are not supposed to evict your wife. Because this act says that you have to keep a place for her stay, and you can't push her out. And similarly, or any mentally ill or physically challenging are often not cared equally like others, because the parents or the kids feel that it is difficult to get taken forward. But in spite of that, there are several physically challenging persons excelled and proving themselves. And also thanks to government initiatives of affirmative actions. And rape is another important area. There are a number of legal provisions, and recent 2013 is a criminal law amendment also safeguarding the girls, and there are provisions. And one of my students is working on almost completed and submitting on child abuse, child rapes, taking the judgment she is into analyzing into kind of secondary victimization, how she's already victimized as a rape victim, and that justice was not done. And sometimes they will be asking the rapist himself to get married off this girl, etc. That is huge. But there are other sources. It was quite surprising when I was correcting the thesis that the police, the judicial officials, the doctors, and whoever the other secondary, they are called secondary sources, and they are being victimized, and very, very, including judges. They of course, in the legal arena, when you have evidence only, you can go. And very often the rape cases, difficult to get evidences of whatever asked for. And therefore, many cases are dismissed for want of evidences. And in several cases, these rape victims who are going there are being looked down upon, ill-treated, and the police themselves advising not to proceed anymore, and because she is not going to get justice immediately. So several years together, even 20 years, 15 years, the rape victims live on. And the secondary source of victim by way of these torture, the verbal abuse, sometimes physical abuse, led these, even worse than the rape itself. That is what it was told by some of the anecdotes by the very rape victims. And so the gap is that it is the girl, when she's a rape victim, it is always pointing to girl, like a woman. Why she? And unfortunately, you may be shocked to hear that this girl, the rape victims were ranging from 3 years to 72 years. So we wonder as to why a woman of 72-year-old be victimized, raped, and why this 3-year-old be raped. So rape is not just because of the reproductive age group. It was beyond the reproductive, both in the lower and the higher end. And so the system is always like take, including these secondary sources, leave alone the rapist and the rape victim. The others who are coming there when it is taken as a case, reported by them. The very discouragement is to not report. Very police themselves will always say that you need not report this. You are going to lose your home. Who will marry you if you come and report here? So these are the kind of gaps. The legal provisions is there, and you are supposed to admit and follow the procedure. And many a time FIR won't be filed at all for a month together. And therefore, even after a month only, it will be said that but the rape would have occurred long back. And the judge will say, why you haven't reported on this date? So here, the delay of the police officials, not filing FIR on the date of report. Now, in the court, the judge will be asking, why you haven't reported for a month? And how can this be proved? And they will be going for the two-finger test. That is not supposed to be done. Still, doctors are doing that. And the judge, give report based on that, the girl is being ruptured or not. And that is also going as a sometime 3-year-old. How would you say? It is difficult, no? But even for that, a two-finger test was done and it was read. So this is what the gap is there. You are so happy that so many legislations are there. But unfortunately, so many gaps. And these gaps really provide space for the victims to be further victimized and not really giving remedy except exceptional cases. And of course, sexual harassment at workplaces. This is another major concern. Because on the one hand, you're talking about national policy for women empowerment, and people are supposed to be there in the public space like others. The men, you are also equally to participate in the public space, whether it is economic participation or political participation or social participation, whatever. But unfortunately, the workplace is not safe. In many contexts, sexual harassment is. Of course, you know the meaning of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is not just penetration. It is verbal abuse. It is pornography. It is abuse, physical abuse. So it is not necessarily that one into sexual intercourse only will be amounting to sexual harassment. So that is happening. If you don't want, there are two sides of the coin. One side is that if you don't want, you will harass. In fact, one of my cases, I used to be there in the ICC, Internal Complaints Committee, where I noticed in one of the central government departments, the woman was a pregnant woman, and she is supposed to go and this is a public company where people would come and pay money. And this has to be deposited in the bank. And this woman is responsible for depositing in the morning before 10:30. And she would be coming to the office and waiting. And she was pregnant, advanced stage of pregnancy. But the man, there was no kind of a good relationship. And therefore, this manager would come late, the man. And she would be standing. And this case came to. It is not actually any sexual harassment. But it is harassment. It is amounting to sexual harassment in this category of punishment. And so it was it was taken up. And also societal violence against women. So these are the various areas where violations are taking place. And I take this as the gaps also. You have the opportunities that these kind of laws are there. You can address the declining sex ratio. Now you have the Beti Padhao system. Here in Tamil Nadu, we have cradle baby system scheme wherein if you don't want the girl child being born, you can come and live in the crash where the cradle will be there, and you can leave the child and go instead of throwing somewhere out. And you have the dowry. That was a huge menace, and several dowry deaths, and now preventing it. So all these, I'm trying to say that very good in terms of laws. We have these laws, but unfortunately there are gaps, and so it is difficult to rather go about as to how these gaps to be fulfilled. And that is where the role of CSOs comes. I think I have to shift to the role of CSOs. by closing this, these are the women laws, and you have these 10 laws, right from Equal Remuneration Act. All these I have discussed there in the handbook. You can very well refer the dowry prohibition, the immoral trafficking, the preconception, prenatal test, the medical termination, the commission of sati, the prohibition of child marriage, sexual harassment at workplace, the maternity benefit into such recently into such act further amended, and you have the right to. And so in the Indian context, these are all the perspectives how women are being discriminated as per the kind of a social norm prevailing in the society, and they face familial, societal, racial, marital, economic, and religious discrimination. And again in the Indian context also, you can see 3 phases. The first phase between 1825 to 1915, the women's rights activists, social reformers fought against the social issues. To mention a few, I can say Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra, Asahar, and Jyotirao Phule, they fought against the issues of sati, the widow remarriage, etc. And you have got really the prevention act for preventing it also. And there were some women in the upper caste community also repelled against these restrictions imposed by Brahminical traditions, and they also participate in the freedom struggle to work against the untouchability, the women's enslavement, etc., etc. And there were also some development in terms of founding first school for women, founding first college and first graduates, etc., which I have mentioned here. And the second phase from 1915 to 47, where we could get some important organizations like National Federation for Indian Women, All India Women's Conference, and several first things happened, like Sarojini Naidu elected the president of Indian National Congress, and Child Marriage Act was banned, child marriages was banned, and political engagement of women also introduced. And the post 1947 constituted the third phase, where I just already mentioned post constitutional amendments, 1974 towards equality report, and the kind of interventions, new policies, affirmative actions. And of course, in the legal context, all these laws, 10 to 13 exclusive women legislations were brought, and post Nirbhaya includes the POCSO Act, the POSH Act, that is prevention of sexual harassment at workplaces. The POCSO, you know, prevention of child sexual offense, prevention of protection of children from sexual offenses, 2012. All these, and of course, you had this very proactive judgments also from Supreme Court, like women started for joining in the Air Force, and the sexual harassment at workplace was also one of the concerns, and Supreme Court ordered that the women with pregnant, the Air India had a policy to send out the women getting pregnant within 4 years of the service, and that was also a landmark judgment giving up that. And recently, the recent issues are cyber crimes too. I was talking about cyber. The State Commission for Women in Tamil Nadu is conducting a series of workshops in different districts, and awareness is being created on these cyber defamation, stalking. Like stalking is the electronically following, like physical following is one that is stalking, and voyeurism, like taking pictures without your knowledge. In fact, yesterday it was reported that in a particular huge merchant shop, the very two workers themselves fixed their mobile there in the dressing trial rooms, and it was identified that the staff themselves were doing that and arrested. And morphing, that is what this State Commission for Women was telling, that if you fix a picture there in your DP, that will be morphed and something else will be brought, and that is what she said. It's better refrain from what you fix the picture there. And there are a number of ways. You may not have to make it public. You may keep it, blocking others Even if you fix the picture, you can keep it only to the private. But anyway, you shouldn't have that restrictions because you have the freedom to, and that shouldn't be the excuse for kind of recurring cyber crimes. Then I know cyber pornography is worst, and cyberbullying, catfishing, etc. And other forms of crimes include the honor crimes. It is happening across the country, and it's very much visible in Tamil Nadu also. Every now and then we hear that the girl in another caste community got married and killed. Either the boy is killed or the girl is being threatened, etc. And the whole lot of reproductive rights, the infertility is a big issue, and the assisted reproductive technologies are playing a very important role. There are several acts. So to kind of concluding, what we have to do is like in the digital context, there are a number of issues, emerging issues in the context, and we have to be aware of. Being CSOs working there with the field, we have to take it forward to the community that these are the issues and also areas of concern. So there is a digital divide, and emerging technologies likely to exacerbate existing inequalities that we have been crying, making a huge issue since the pandemic, because on whatever, even this online interaction, and those who could afford to digital divide only will be able to, others may not. And this would be very much true with respect to the students, whether it is school students or college students. And therefore, there's going to be a kind of a divide. And women in low-skill jobs will be disproportionately impacted by automation, because if everything is machine automated, and now we are in the era of artificial intelligence, and therefore it's quite likely that women will be thrown out, particularly in the low-level marginalized wage work. And in the higher education level, but women labor participation stagnates, opportunities remain restricted. Again, either the women withdraw from the labor market as far as the higher education level is concerned, or there's a kind of a stagnation because the other, more and more women into higher education. And almost the gender divide in higher education in Tamil Nadu context is very, very minimum, and though it is large there in other context. How can emerging technologies and changing working conditions be leveraged to give women equal access to decent and work and agency would be the question that we have to discuss, and the CSOs has to discuss. Global market trends have negatively impacted social mobility. Like it is like work from home, and you supply the work order at home, because it will save the cost of production, and outsourcing, putting out system, all these are all the order of the day in the renewable context, and therefore the globalization policies have also paid price for that in terms of lower participation of it. And digital gender divide disadvantages women. I already told, women's future of work will still be affected by patriarchy and inequality, because you being women, you can sit at home work, but I can't. So the mobility will be more for the kind of work where men will be, and the less on women. And of course, given the sexual harassment of workplaces and other kinds of structural difficulties, women's employment will be restricted. And structural issues regarding women's place in traditional emerging fields of work also need to be addressed, for which a special attention is to be made by the CSOs in terms of making the women locally available resources be tapped, and where the kind of the micro enterprises, small enterprises initiation would be helpful, thanks to kind of different schemes, Stand Up India, Startup India, Mudra scheme, etc. with the government, and that can be utilized in favor of these women who are not able to, or restricted mobility suffer, but at the same time wanted to earn and supplement the income in their source. And market-driven solutions to women participation in traditional and digital jobs would be examined. So that should be also part of the agenda for CSOs. And new models for social protection delinked from formal employment will be needed. Like now, informalization in the formal sector is happening. You can take our own education sector. So we have permanent employees participation shrinking further and further, whereas the informal in the sense they will be paid hourly basis without no social security, etc. And this is getting widened also. So the rights of women as workers will be in play. And of course, it's for men also, specifically for men. And when there is no social protection, nothing would be there. At the end of the day, whatever age you draw, that will only be available. Strategies for safeguarding women's rights in the digital world need to be developed. So what kind of strategies that can have a consultant appointed and accordingly discuss. So these are all the issues which I wanted to discuss on the perspectives of the what I should say, but this itself became 5 o'clock. Can I take more time for one more discussion? What is the audience participants' preference? At least a role of CSOs for 10 more minutes.
Still, we have 47 CSO members connected to us.
Shall I go at least for that one presentation, the role of CSOs?
If yes, madam. Since we are getting good response, you can go.
Yeah.
You have to drink some water, ma'am.
Yeah, very much.
It was really an interesting session. It was content packed.
Yeah.
It was good.
So yeah, it was just an overview of, because it is a notion. There are a lot of laws, amendments, and new laws, etc., etc. But I could present only this. And now I'm moving to at least given these, what are the role of CSOs? This is very important. So I'll try to present it quickly. It's on 10 slides or so. Yeah. So going quickly to, because I have already told all those. Yeah. Civil society, the roles. So they are the CSOs are the channel for service delivery. I already claimed and conveyed that it is the third pillar of development and watchdogs of the kind of deviations, if any, and you point to the deviations and how it has to be set right, etc. So channel for service delivery, and you also play as a role of a facilitator of a dialogue and negotiation. Very often, particularly the kind of the environmental discussions, there are always trade-offs, whether environment or development. There is a Phillips curve theory saying that a trade-off is required when you are going beyond the exploitation of the environment, where you have to have a trade-off whether you need development or environmental protection. And there are permits also in the environment theory. It was told that, okay, I want to use this, so you buy the permits and you pollute, and you have to pay price for that. That is a different thing, but there are systems working for that. There are a number of environmental laws, and therefore you always, being CSOs, working with the people, working with the kind of resources, natural resource or whatever the other resource management, it is you will be presenting the actual issues and always have a dialogue and negotiate for. And social conscience, holding authorities accountable for their actions. Anything like if a company is there and the effluent is to be treated and let out in the river bodies, so that it don't get contaminating the kind of whether it is drinking water source or whatever. But unfortunately, several what we call in economics the moral suasion, like you always take advantage of that and let out the untreated effluent into the river bodies and further contribute to the pollution, and because of the time, rendering it unusable, not at all usable. That is what we have lost our own irrigation sources, river bodies, and several such examples, including Kuvam there in Chennai. And you being the CSOs, remaining as corrective agents, campaigning against abuses of power and for the protection of promotion of human rights. And there are several incidences here in Tamil Nadu, whether it is Kuam or the Neduvasal, several such areas, methane gas extraction or the ocean occupying, whatever the kind of action that you kill the very microorganisms there in the ocean, etc. And source of policy advice. So being CSOs playing such a role, it is always coming to the question of women's rights. It has to be, you have to uphold and negotiate, have dialogue, whatever the kind of negotiations that is possible with the state to bring, to ensure that the women enjoy the rights or the marginalized enjoy their rights must be done, must have to be taken as the question of issue of concern. So you will be playing there as an advocacy role and contribute to improve governance, capacity building, rehabilitation, enhance livelihood project, because the resources would be there and you may not be, people may not be knowing as to how to interact resources. And therefore, in that way, you will be working there. And so in the human rights-based approach also, which is an approach to promote human rights program work systematically, it's taken as a tool for empowerment. So CSOs need to take this human rights-based approach. Because when it is health, or when a boy and a girl are suffering and the boy is taken to the hospital and the girl is just attended with home remedies, you need to intervene. If it is not in a single household, takes place. It does take place in other places also. And so in toto, it will be like denial of gender justice. So it has to be from the very, it may appear trivial, but very important. So that onwards, till property rights, property ownership, right to marriage, right to choose their own partners, all such things in a very human rights-based approach. I don't say only women, when it is a boy or a transgender person or a differently able person. So there are 7 practical steps in which the human rights-based approach could be applied by the CSOs. And I'll just spell out those. The situation analysis, that comprehensive background analysis, examining the exact problem. We simply say take situation analysis and then go for, that is what people advocate. So in fact, even I have done when the political participation of women, why it is very low, and we have been struggling to get that 3% reservation from the Parliament and Legislative Assembly, though we have succeeded in getting even 50% there in the local body. And of course, there are again in the human rights approach, why the 73rd and 74th Amendment, though in number it is being sanctioned and implemented, but actual practice is not being like how the women, particularly the scheduled caste women, are being neglected to occupy the chair, etc. So we need to do whatever the issue on which you decided to work. In the women's issues, there are a number of concerns. So whether it is domestic violence or dowry or political participation or sexual harassment at workplace or child marriages or child labor, whatever, or rape, extreme cases, violence. This situation analysis to be made. And causality analysis, like you have to investigate and specify the major consequences and immediate issue, identify the immediate underlying structural causes. Several times it is because, say for example, I was talking about hand killing, and it is a structural issue. Like there is a structured caste system, and you have a caste community, association, etc. And that caste association will be back and screwing you that you shouldn't allow your girl to get married up to other child. And it is now even safeguarding your own community. You should not send your girl or a boy to other community because they will change their community. So they feel that a kind of an extension to certain communities, and that is one of the reasons why they want to. They shouldn't be spelled out. Even it was happening in the nomads gypsy community also. When I conducted a study there near Devaraneri, where the gypsies are living, they said they will go for 3 children, 4 children, 5 children in the time where the government is implementing 2 children norm or 1 child norm. And the very reason given by them, the very nomads and gypsy community, was that in Tamil called Narikura community, they say that no, we are already very minority, and say in terms of size of the population, and if we go on, what we call the family planning, we follow family planning and reduce our size of the families, number of children, then we will go to the kind of extension, and our the community will be non-existent. That is what their concern. And therefore, we need to conduct causality analysis. And then role pattern analysis, that is the kind of understanding the duties, duty bearers and right holders and their duties, and map what has to be done. Then capacity gap analysis. Like in the process, I told that they have to attend each and every stage. So if the people are not capable of using that particular facility, they have to be build their capacity too, whether it is technical capacity building or even legal capacity building. They have to understand what are their rights and then utilize them. Then identification of candidate actions and strategies. So see these, whatever the capacity gap analysis and the earlier 3 situation, causality and role pattern analysis, the next step is to choose the strategies that are most effective. So we know this is the, like female female feticide. This is a huge menace. We have been trying, and several registrations have been passed, interventions are being, incentives are being given, but so we have to understand that you have already done the root cause analysis or the whatever situation analysis, and so move further as to how effectively it could be. Of course, the root is the very deep-rooted patriarchal social norm. So that is to be addressed. Then partnership analysis. That is identification of key actors. Like any particular issue cannot be addressed only by a single. It requires multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary perspective. People has to be drawn from various practitioners as well as the theoretical people who are working there, the research and theory. Then project design. The chosen priority action or defined as a clear project. So in this also, we are talking about women's rights. So in a rights-based approach, whatever I have just explained in the earlier presentation, that there are a number of areas we have brought already, we've succeeded in bringing legislations, and so-called private issues, those issues which are considered as private or personal issues, were brought back, taken back as public issue, and the law has been enacted. And the laws enacted are not really working, and that causes to be analyzed. Then focus of participation, because I already told in the earlier context that people should participate, and participation alone will help. And participation in the very strict sense of the term, like it is not passive participation. Often in the Grama Sabha meeting, women will be invited, it seems, but they will be there and passively sign and go, or even if they raise some issues, that will be discussed, but it won't come to the merits. That is what I have been told by. And this NGOs also, not just in the initial stages of framing, you also have any issue for that matter on the rights-based approach, women about workers' rights, women workers' rights, or women's social issues or others. It has to be like in each stage, monitoring, evaluation, and the loan advocacy. Also, the NGOs need to concentrate. That can be like in these areas, enhancing the knowledge base. You need to, like, if there is any gap about the understanding of the project intervention, it is our duty to improve the knowledge. Then advocacy and lobbying. Many a time, even the community won't. Say, for example, this female feticide is happening with the consent of everyone in the family, And I know there are a number of NGOs working and identifying the high-risk mothers. Like if they have one female baby already, the second is conceived, they are being located as high-risk mothers, because the moment they come to know that the child she's carrying is a female, then it's quite likely that they will abort. Or if they are having already 2 girl children, third is quite likely to be taken for abortion. So if it is revealed as a girl baby. So that is what advocacy and lobbying, membership, and there are other like environmental several areas advocacy and lobbying is concerned. I mean, is required, be it resource management, natural resource depletion, or protecting the environment, protecting the species, safeguarding the interest of the Western Ghats, whatever. Membership and national delegations. So collective, that is in the beginning itself, that labor movement, if it is something related to labor rights, labor movement should all be together. So let be there, even at the national, I mean, the world conferences, several women in NGOs who were working on women's issues were part of the Beijing conference. And so delegations and contribution to compliance review enforcement, ensuring transparency, supporting international secretaries, broader functions of NGOs in the international environmental governance. So based on the issues on which each one is working, the kind of race-based approach steps to be followed, and in any leakages should also be attended immediately. Often the leakages would be from very people, the so-called community organizations, sorry, not community organizations, caste-based organizations. If it is something to do with the social issues, they have been safeguarding for a long, and now if they feel that it is being shaken, then they will emerge, and all sorts of tricks will be used to restore to the original position. And therefore, NGOs should take this as an opportunity to show the kind of legal provisions available, and then analyze the gaps and accordingly set right with the discussion from various collective organizations. With this, I stop. Thank you very much, and it's open for discussion if anybody's having any clarifications.
Thank you very much, ma'am, because the last presentation was very relevant particularly for NGOs to engage in this. It would have been a real loss if we didn't cover this part. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to ask any questions, you can raise your hands. Otherwise, we understand that it's really late, so we don't want to hold you also. But it was really a great session today. It was very comprehensive. You have touched upon all the topics we have planned. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also take this opportunity to thank particularly the participants for that patient staying for more than 2 hours. And I only was concerned with the language. Sir, I discussed with Tyagarajan sir also. But anyway, it is a national level discussion. We need to do away. Can't help. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, madam. Thank you.
Is there any questions or?
No question. May I make a comment?
Sure, sir. Please.
Madam, this is a very good overall presentation you made, and there are a lot of learning. There are you are historically analyzed the changes taken place in women development, and there are a lot of schemes, contributions from the government as well as from other agencies, which leads to the development of the woman in the country. The thing is, as you rightly said, the participation of women is important in all these sectors. For example, let us say in Kerala, the political empowerment of women took place with this Panchayat Raj constitutional amendment. Today in Kerala, 50% of the seats are reserved for women. So women have active participation in Panchayat, as well as they have a role to play in terms of decision making. Similarly, in this Kudumbashree projects, in Kerala, where again the women are come out of the house, they are engaged for their own development through self-help activities. So women come out and they are engaged, or they are participated in political and as well as other social and economic development activities that leads to the development. But here now, for example, as you said, this a great number of women are working in the informal sector or unorganized sector, where there is a problem. For example, with this
Yeah.
COVID or the issues like climate change, it is mostly affected by women or their own small enterprises or livelihood activities. So it's a very complex and
Yeah,
sensitive
we very much witnessed,
It-
because we are working with women entrepreneurs.
yeah.
Some of them close their enterprises.
Yeah, so they need a continuous support. From my experience and Kerala experience, what I'm saying is their participation in all these sectors and support through the schemes, as you said, this Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, that in fact improved the wage rate of the woman, increased from 100 rupees to 400 to 500 rupees in many parts. Even in Kerala, of course, we used to say that we give equal wage, but now with this employment guarantee scheme, the wage rate has increased up to 500 for all unskilled work for women. So these are the schemes they support. So such type of supports will gradually make changes, but still there are problems. You have mentioned this, right to equal share in the case of
Property.
inherit. That's a big issue today. Today we
Yeah.
are discussing uniform civil code. So it's more complex, political as well as religiously connected. So there are certain traditions which continue in our country. So
Definitely.
it takes time. Gradually, through education of all the women, all the people in the country, it will gradually change. So I
Definitely.
just wanted to make this new question.
I fully agree with you. In fact, we are going to have Indian Association for Women's Studies national conference that we hold once in 3 years in Trivandrum. And you are from Trivandrum.
Yes.
Yeah. Please join. It will be happening in Women's College, Government Women's College.
Trivandrum, Vadudakar.
Trivandrum.
Yes.
I'll take the mail IDs and share the brochure. It would be going to be a huge conclave of women academicians, activists, and many Sukumar from Planning Board is the secretary of IWS. So you are welcome. I was recently there for a week for making arrangements. I am also the office bearer at that association.
Okay. Thank you. Binduji, if you can share Madam's PPT, it will be nice. Thank you.
They will share.
So on behalf of TechStep, thank you so much for staying with us till the last. We have actually crossed nearly 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's a record. It was so nice. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you all.